What is going on in the New York City subway right now? In this video, we will go over some news that you may have potentially missed that happened in May. One of the biggest pieces of news this month is rather old, but is starting to gain a bit of traction in the mainstream. It is about how the MTA cut costs for CBTC projects, from $50 million per mile to about $25 million per mile. This marks a 50% decrease, and there are two reasons. The first are the new in-house facilities. Instead of an over-reliance on contractors, the MTA would try to do as much of the work themselves. This helps the MTA control costs because if something goes wrong, the MTA can immediately fix it, instead of waiting for different contractors to do so. Furthermore, less reliance on contractors means more control over prices, as you don't need to have different middlemen scrambling to get a cut of the pie. The second reason is that whenever the MTA used to install CBTC, they kept the old signals in place. This creates much higher maintenance costs, which is why now they remove those old signals in question. Yes, many of the old work trains would also need to be retrofitted with CBTC, but CBTC is the future of the subway, and I'd much rather rely on that than deteriorating traffic signals that are so old that only select transit agencies actually manufactures them. But anyway, this is a great start, but I like the MTA to go further and expand this. Do it for everything: maintenance, new extensions. Also, instead of $25 million per mile, go down to $10 million per mile, especially when other cities in London can still do this for way cheaper. But then again, this is already a good step, and the MTA will probably expand on this because of the promising results we have seen already. The second one is that New Jersey Transit workers are currently on strike. That is because New Jersey Transit engineers say that they should make a similar amount as engineers at the other railroads in the region. The state and the union couldn't reach a deal, which is why they are on strike. Hopefully this can be resolved, and a deal is reached that respects the demands of the engineers and workers that help keep us moving. The oldest continuously operated station turns 140 years old this month. Gates Avenue on the J train was opened initially as part of the terminal of the BMT Lexington Avenue line on May 13, 1885. However, it didn't remain the terminal for long, as the line was extended in piecemeal fashion to Van Siclen Avenue by December of that same year. What is interesting is that in 2026, station improvement work will begin to add new elevators to make it fully compliant with the ADA. This will help bring the 140-year-old station into the 21st century. Subway service will be restored to the Rockways this month. The viaducts that carry the A train into the Rockways needed a lot of repair and flood mitigation work, and this type of work was not suitable for a nights and weekends approach. Therefore, the A was suspended in January for this work to proceed. With work being completed on schedule, A service to the Rockways is expected to come back this week. And speaking of the Rockways, we got Queens Link. You know it is coming. Basically, there is an abandoned rail line in the center of Queens, and if reactivated, would yield a ton of benefits. But recently, the state legislature recently passed the state budget, and Hochul signed it. Inside the state budget is $100,000 for Queenslink to do their comprehensive study. Combined with an earlier resolution passed by the city council calling for the EIS of Queenslink, plus the earlier $400,000 that Queenslink successfully applied for from the federal government, Queenslink now has the support of local, state, and the federal government. It all goes to show that your work is never in vain, and I would like to thank you all for continuing to believe in the message of Queenslink. Finally, the first phase at Woodside is wrapping up at this time. Over the past few years, the 7 train has been undergoing serious renovations, first at 82nd Street and 111th Street, then at Woodside, 61st Street. This work is sorely needed, as station conditions along the 7 are considered one of the worst in the entire system. And Woodside, 61st Street was no exception, where apple-sized holes were discovered in the station structure. This is why work has been taking so long, because there's so much you can do, replacing the entire structure while having 24/7 revenue service on one of the busiest lines in the system. Now that this work is wrapping up, work is going to transition onto one of the local tracks. When that happens, it is likely that the MTA also shuts down one direction at 52nd and 69th Street, because rehabilitation also needs to occur at those stations. But what about 33rd, 40th, and 46th Street? Well, the MTA is likely going to construct temporary station structures on the local tracks, meaning that there still will be no express service for at least another year. Hopefully, the MTA also closes down 103rd Street concurrently with these repairs, so that work can go by faster. That is pretty much it for current New York City subway news. If you want to see more videos like this, where on random occasions I just yap about some news about the New York City subway, let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.